Hi everybody, welcome to today's ISE broadcast. We've got a very pertinent topic to be discussing, which is the looming youth employment crisis today. I've got a really good broad panel of policy experts, employers, and also some students as well to talk to. My name's Steve Isherwood, so I'm Chief Exec of the ISE and I'll act as host for today. If you haven't joined one of our ISE webinars before, I'll just give you a bit of an idea about how they run. We've probably got enough content. We'll be going to around about 1:15, and we've left some time at the end for questions. Because of the volume of people who tune in, as an audience, we mute your microphones, but we really want your engagement. So use the dialogue box on the platform, pop your questions into there. I'll keep an eye on those questions as we go through and present them to our panelists. Sometimes I do it as we go along, but normally actually I struggle doing two things at once, so I normally save them to the end. If you have got a question, just a little request from me, please don't write War and Peace, because I'm trying to read and talk at the same time, and so if you've got a question, just keep it nice and succinct. I would very much appreciate that. Right, so let's introduce the panel first of all. I'll go through the screening as I see people on my screen. I think that's the best way to do it. So, Sam, would you like to introduce yourself first?
I shall indeed. I'll unmute myself. I'm Sam Windett. I'm Director of Policy at Impetus, a youth charity, and I'm also a co-chair of the Youth Employment Group.
Ronan, would you like to go next?
Yes, so my name's Ronan Constantine. I work at Blue Prism. I work in our Centre of Excellence and also work with our Blue Prism for Good team. I had the pleasure of helping organise the EY Foundation Smart Futures programme with Blue Prism this summer, which was fantastic.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Ronan. Rob, can I go to you next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Robert. I'm what's called the Southern Hub leader at the foundation. So I've been with the foundation for about 3 years now. I help manage and coordinate and oversee our programme delivery for the foundation with young people for key programs in the south of England, essentially.
Thanks so much. Actually, Ronan and Rob, I don't think you know this. I used to run graduate recruitment at EY about 7 or 8 years ago, but it was just as the foundation was starting, so I knew of it, but not that close. But yes, it feels a bit like an EY reunion, one way or another.
That's a bit strange because I was a graduate at EY a few years ago before I moved across to Blue Prism.
I saw your LinkedIn profile. Yeah. Yeah, I think I think you were there a bit after my time, so I probably didn't have a hand in your recruitment, Ronan, but I probably know the people who did. So just going to the rest of our panelists, Amandeep, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi all, I'm a 17-year-old student from the West Midlands. I currently work very closely with the Sutton Trust, the Social Mobility Foundation, and more recently the EY Foundation, working with students like myself who are very much bearing the brunt of this youth unemployment crisis.
Fantastic, and we'll come back to you shortly to hear more of your experiences, Amandeep. And last but by no means least, we'll try and get Callum. Callum's been having some connection difficulties, which is why we were slightly late starting. So, Callum, can you hear me? Are you able to introduce yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, yes, loud and clear. Great.
Oh, brilliant, thank you. Right, my name's Callum. I'm a student in Greater Manchester, and I do further maths and computer science. And I joined the EY so I can try and get some experience and also gain some skills and knowledge in order to help me in my working life.
Fantastic, that's great, thank you very much. Right, we'll be coming to all of you a little bit later, but first up we have Sam, who's going to be talking about her giving good insight into the whole policy side of things. If I'm sounding a bit disjointed, it's because I'm getting Sam's slides up again as I'm talking. I really am doing two things at once. So Sam, can I have you get starting to talk, and I'll get your slides up.
I will start talking. You can do one thing at once. That will help. No, thanks for inviting us, Stephen. And as you can tell, I am the least important panelist of everybody here because I have some great speakers alongside me, which is fantastic. So all I'm going to do is sort of some background setting out the challenge that we have ahead of us in youth employment before we get on to the young people, Callum and Amandeep, and also employers and EY Foundation after me. So if we go to the first slide, Impetus, where I am a director, we work with young people from particularly disadvantaged backgrounds to help them succeed in school and work in life. And we've been doing a lot of research over the years to establish the gap between young people going into employment from disadvantaged backgrounds and their better off peers. And that's what drives our work. We've also formed a youth employment group, which I co-chair, which only formed actually because of the coronavirus crisis. So it's quite a recent group, and we're looking at this for a number of reasons. If we go on to the next slide, I'll tell you why. In previous recessions, we know that young people are particularly hard hit. They've always sort of borne the brunt of recessions. But we could see quite early on in this recession that that was going to be even worse this time around, because young people, the sectors that were being most impacted by the lockdown were the ones that young people were more likely to work in. So we know that in those shutdown sectors, young people are 2.5 times as likely to work in, such as hospitality, retail, and others. But also we know young people, are coming out of the education system all the time. So those education leavers, around 600,000 a year, are coming into a very turbulent labour market this year without necessarily the work experience that other candidates might have. They're more likely to lose their jobs, sort of last in, first out. So if there are redundancies to be made, young people tend to bear the brunt of that. And lockdown hit as summer recruitment was starting. So right back in March, we sort of saw some of these challenges start to emerge, and we thought to ourselves, as Impetus, we're a youth charity interested in these things, but by ourselves, we're only going to achieve so much. So we thought we needed to join together and really talk about what's going to be happening to young people, and really highlighting that to government and others. We go on to the next slide. The data is starting to bear this out now, so there's always a lag between what is happening to young people and what the data shows, but we are starting to see that now. So in the last set of ONS statistics, you can see there the age group 18 to 24, over 156,000 young people fell out of employment in the last quarter, and compare that to the other age groups. There's not even this in the way same for other age groups at all, much hitting the young people far worse than the others. If we go to the next slide, you'll also see this in young people, in the people claiming benefits. So that's all age groups. You can see the 18 to 24 is much higher than others. Before coronavirus hit, young people were 1 in 15 young people were claiming unemployment benefits. The current number is 1 in 7. So that went from 1 in 15 to 1 in 7. You can see the sharp rise. And if we go on to the next slide, it wasn't that we were starting from a great basis. I mean, there was record youth employment, but there were still a number of young people who were missing out. There were over 700,000 young people not in education, employment, or training. And we know that the longer young people stay out of work, and this is one of our key concerns, the longer young people stay out of work, the more likely they are to remain out of work. And we absolutely don't want that to happen. The longer young people stay out of work, the more likely they are to have their future earnings impacted, their future job prospects impacted, and also their health too, and the impact on their local communities. So we know that this is a really important area for government to be active on. If we go to the next slide. That's why we formed this youth employment group, as I mentioned. So you can see Impetus, along with other chairs. We have over 160 member organisations of the youth employment group, of which, Stephen, you are one, which is great, as is the EY Foundation. We realised that this isn't something that one sector is going to solve. So in the youth employment group, we have employers, colleges, local authorities, combined authorities, frontline charities. Lots of different groups are part of the youth employment group, because we needed to very quickly come up with solutions that government could implement. We don't have the one thing we don't have is time. Everything is urgent, and we need to be supporting young people urgently. So we knew that government had a lot on their hands with getting food out to people, making sure people had housing, got their benefits paid, and that was their main concerns. We were looking sort of a little bit further ahead at what government needed to do to support young people who would be impacted in the labour market. We go on to the next slide. We, along with 2 other task forces, called for an opportunity guarantee for young people. That was that every young person has a quality route into education, training or employment between the ages of 16 and 24. And in summer, we actually saw the Prime Minister announce an opportunity guarantee for young people. And we also saw the Chancellor announce a number of measures after that, one of which was Kickstart scheme, which some people may have heard of. So, you know, the government did sit up and listen and did realise that we do have challenges that we really need to support young people in. Go to the next slide. So that list of initiatives. So there was Kickstart, but there was also expansion of employment support services, more work coaches in job centres, expanding the youth offer that the government provides. And that was back in summer. So some of these have started to, well, they haven't started rolling out yet, but the Kickstart scheme, for example, is due to start next month. So hopefully, you know, government's been working very, very quickly to try and get these schemes up and running. And we hope to see some of the benefits of those over the next few months. We move to the next slide. But the scale of this challenge, you know, we're certainly not through the worst, and it'd be really interesting to hear from Callum and Anamdeep of their experiences of what's been happening. But we know that there'll be examples of many young people over the next few months that we need to support. So that opportunity guarantee still needs to be in place, and that is education, training or apprenticeships that every young person has a route through to, so that young people aren't sitting without any training, without any employment opportunities. Also, the Kickstart scheme, it really focuses on those young people that need help, and it focuses on progressing them into sustained employment. That's really important. That actually these schemes and initiatives the government's introducing really lead to really good outcomes at the end, and not just, you know, 6 months of work placement, but a good job at the end of it. And there's a real issue around getting the right information, advice and guidance to young people. So there may be lots of routes on offer, but do young people get to hear about them? How do they hear about these routes and what's on offer? So that's incredibly important. There still feels like a long way to go, and there's lots for us to do. If you go on to the next slide. There is more information on the Youth Employment Group, and if you are interested in seeing developments around youth employment, that second link there, the LinkedIn group, we have around 950 members of that LinkedIn group, where we're keeping each other updated on new research, new reports, data, and what each other are doing. If you're interested, do join up to that. The Youth Employment Group, you can join as an organisation and be part of these developments. Our recommendations that we're still putting to government are in the final link there. So it's sort of, there's a lot being done, but there's still a huge amount to do as well. And I'm sure we will hear that from our other speakers as well. So I think that's me done, Stephen. I'm looking forward to some questions from everybody.
Fantastic, thank you, Sam. Just a quick question from me, just before we jump over to Callum and Andy. It's very easy to get kind of sucked into the Twitter storms and the headlines. I mean, these are big, difficult problems that we're facing as a society. I just wondered, do you think the government is doing a good job within all the constraints that they have and the pace of this, or do you think there's a lot more they can do? I just wondered where you sort of felt we were at the moment. Are you as comfortable as we can be with progress, or I'm not trying to make you to make a political statement. I'm trying to, I guess, get behind the headlines a little bit on that.
It's a really good question, and that's the issue, I think, is that headlines only show sort of, you know, the bad news stories more often than not, and there are, unfortunately, you know, it looks like we're on for over 1 million young people out of education work. The figures are coming through from research that, you know, those are the things we have to do. Is the government doing enough? A lot needs to be done quickly, and to do things quickly is quite hard to do it perfectly. And there is a balance to be struck here. We need programs in place quickly, and they are working at speed. I think the key is when these initiatives come in, that if they're not working for all young people that they need to, that they get improved over time. So Kickstart, for example, is lasting until December 2021. Hopefully we'll see between now and then significant improvements to the scheme over time. And I think that's right. That doesn't make headlines. It's not particularly interesting for journalists to report on, but there are a lot of nuances. However, I think that there is a lot more that needs to be put in place. Kickstart is only one piece of the puzzle. There's many other pieces that are needed, and I think that's the next phase. I think we really need to step up to that. So I think it's sort of good so far, but much more progress needed.
Fantastic, thanks, Sam. I'll come back to you and get to the Q&A piece. Right, excellent. So you gave a nice little sort of lead into Amandeep and Callum. So it'd be really good to hear your perspective on this, because obviously, being students, you're in this, and I think quite often your voice doesn't come through enough when we discuss these kind of issues. So, Amandeep, can I just turn to you first? Do you want to give us just a bit of an insight into your experience, the experience of your peers? You know, what is it like being out there, sort of thinking about jobs and careers at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and first and foremost, Stephen, I truly just want to express how much of an immense privilege it is to be a panelist on this webinar today. You know, given the nature of this topic as one that is deeply, profoundly concerning the youth, I feel that it was incredibly suitable to have myself and Callum on the webinar today to offer our perspective as people that are ultimately the heart of this grave social ill and experiencing it for ourselves. Before I go on to discuss the nature of how sort of dwindling prospects of youth employment have faced me directly, I just want to offer a bit of perspective on myself, my struggles and my story, and the monumental and very heartfelt implications that this tragedy has had, not just on my life currently, but on where I see myself and where I want to see myself in the future. So I'm growing up currently in and amongst the most deprived areas of the West Midlands, where youth employment or youth unemployment rates are at a whopping 13%, falling just short of London in the northeast. And obviously seeing such grave social economic injustices only within a stone's throw away from me has almost spearheaded me to actively challenge them. So currently, as I mentioned at the start, I work with the Sutton Trust, the Social Mobility Foundation, and more recently the EY Foundation, which has been prodigious in offering a sense of altruistic intervention to young people like myself that have fallen victim to this complete lack of opportunity in some of the most destitute pockets of the UK. Now, my experience with employment or with unemployment has always been around. I myself, I'm a turban wearing Sikh, and naturally I'll always find adversity, whether due to my background, appearance or postcode. But what COVID has done is aggravate this problem that has always existed. And as you can imagine, with a bad situation being made worse, the impact of this injustice has not only been economic, it has not only been monetary, but perhaps has eaten away at something much more sentimental. You know, my hopes, my dreams, my aspirations, some of the truest and most intrinsic elements of my life that I simply won't get back. As Sam quite rightly said, this is an urgent issue that requires an equally as urgent solution. There simply isn't much time before we end up with a forgotten generation of young people that will forever look at those in charge as a cause of their misfortune. And I will say this now, and I'll keep saying it again. You know, we need to push for a solution, and we need to push for a solution now.
Thank you, Amandeep. Callum, can I just jump to you and ask you a similar question, just to just give us a flavour of, I guess, how the crisis is affecting you and what you're seeing with your peer group?
Well, personally for me, I'm from quite a low income background, and when you are from that low income background, you can't always buy the nicest of clothes, you can't always get the easiest of transports, you've got to look for quite local. And where I live locally, there is barely anything. And the amount of things I have found, most times I barely get even a response saying thank you for your application. It's very rare I even get an interview. Once I even get in that interview, then I'd say that interview, even if they tell me they're going to contact me, then they just simply don't. I think it seems in this world, you need to have experience to get experience. And once you're at this point, it seems almost impossible to start, because everyone's expecting to have done so much already, but no one is willing to be that first person. No one is willing to give that chance to people who could really shine. You're just not given it an opportunity. And I feel that is such a shame, as there are some people my age who would be brilliant for specific jobs, who really want to get on top of things at an early age and start trying to make themselves better in the future. And they're just not being allowed to. Companies just want people who have worked before, people who are more experienced, and no one is looking at us. We are invisible, and I think the government needs to do something to stop that, something to make us stand out, something to make us more noticed.
Thanks for that, Callum. I'll come back to you in a minute. So just going back to yourself, Amandeep, what more do you think can be done? What kind of sort of support, advice, help, guidance do you think? Because I think one of the challenges is we're talking about jobs, and there are just fewer jobs in the economy. I mean, I've got grey hair, so I know recessions end, and it will get better. But as we've seen from previous recessions, that the generation coming out of universities or schools that can take 10 years to catch up to their peer groups. I mean, if you look at some of the previous data. So I'm just wondering what would actually you think help would practically on the ground, for yourself and your peers to steer through this crisis?
I think that pragmatically speaking, as Callum pointed out, something needs to be done about this almost this catch-22 situation that we as young people find ourselves in. Lacking the experience to get a job, but where the job almost gives that experience in the first place. It becomes a paradoxical situation for which there isn't much measure around. As Sam pointed out, there is the Kickstart scheme that was announced, but in all honesty, that scheme it didn't reach the pockets of in the most deprived areas, the places where I'm from, the places where perhaps Callum is from, where that scheme is most needed. Perhaps that's down to a lack of information. Perhaps that's down to a lack of accessibility of information for people that perhaps are from backgrounds where education, isn't very strong. But I think foremost, what we need is awareness. What we need is education, and what we need is that sense of that sense of direction for young people. Because as I believe that you mentioned in your question as well. There rarely is a headline where such things as the Kickstart scheme is announced, where it's made public, and perhaps that does feed into the lack of awareness that there is around certain measures that the government is putting through. So I think that whilst the government is making strides in liberalising and democratising the workplace, it needs that fundamental sense of awareness to ultimately put across to the youth, to make those. Or to make those interventions useful in the first place.
And Amandeep, do you see access to things? I mean, one of the things that we were talking about before the pandemic hit was actually the problem of careers advice, guidance, getting actually to people like yourself. Is that something that you have access to? Is something you can see? Are there people that you can go and I guess and get sort of help and advice in terms of the job markets, or how to help yourself prepare for it? Because you come across as a very articulate individual, so I imagine if I was back in my interviewing days, being very impressed with you. But I just wonder if actually you're getting some of that help and guidance that you need to help you get into make those first steps in the jobs market.
There is absolutely nothing, that isn't hyperbolic in any way. That isn't me exaggerating the situation. That there is absolutely nothing within my circle, at least, and within the circle that many of the most deprived students from my background come from, that will ultimately enable the sense of awareness that I've mentioned. Yes, there are career advisors in school. Yes, there is advice online, but the truth is that there's a part of a student's experience, there's a part of an academic's experience that this whole idea that this whole process of making awareness isn't reaching, and that's this idea of being sensitive to what people's hopes, what people's aspirations are, and ultimately providing tailor-fit guidance to what they want to do with their lives. So there, of course, are many interventions, apprenticeships in plumbing, apprenticeships in bricklaying, being an electrician, that I do see many sort of students my age going to. But it's difficult to say that, that their fundamental aspiration, that their fundamental hope from, say, the age of 12 onwards was geared in such a direction. I think that what we do lack is a sense of sensitivity that many people who attempt to guide students like myself to a career, to an earning, that they have in their vocation. And I think that what they need to have is is ultimately a fundamental awareness of different policies and different interventions that the government have put into place themselves, and echo that and continuously echo that within certain pockets, as I've mentioned, of the UK where such awareness isn't around, and continue to echo that until students like myself have full awareness of different prospects, of different opportunities that there are out there.
Great, thanks, Amandine. Callum, can I ask sort of the same questions to yourself, really, in terms of actually that level of support on the ground? We've been talking about things like Kickstarter and various other programs and initiatives the government's putting into place. Is that something that you can see, there's potential access to that at the moment?
If I'm truly honest, I don't see anything about things like Kickstart. If I'm honest, I've not even heard about it, to be honest. There is nothing helping us, guide us to opportunities and things. Personally, I believe they should be putting it more into your academics in school and things. You get taught all these math skills, but you don't get taught any skills that can help you in life, into like getting into employment, how to deal with an interview. There is no help whatsoever to help with any of that. So I believe that we need more awareness of stuff like this in schools and colleges. Maybe having people from, say, Kickstart coming in into all public schools, all colleges and things, just to kind of show you what options there are, make it clear to all students what options there are, and not just the select few who just happen to know about it.
And where do you think that lack of information comes from? Is it because I taught universities and schools and FE colleges, and most of them have careers team in some form or another. Are you saying there's a real disconnect between somebody like yourself and your fellow students, and actually in those kind of services, facilities that are on offer?
I believe so. I mean, like for example, in my college, we've been told we have a careers advisor, but we have no idea who that person is. We've never spoke to them. So we kind of told, but we're not really made aware of anything about it. In high schools, I've had careers advisors, and they've not really been able to help much. They've just sort of asked you a few questions and told you which direction to go, and that's it. So I believe there should be more training involved for the careers advisor. There should be some sort of meeting or something in order to educate the careers advisors into what schemes are, such as the Kickstart scheme that you, Sam, mentioned before, so that they can display that information to the students, to the people that they help, in order to provide a better service for them.
Fantastic. Thanks, Callum and Amandine. We'll come back to you when we got the question and answer piece, but thanks, it really gives a really useful insight there. Rob, can I turn to you now? Because first of all, you're going to give us a bit of an insight into the EY Foundation and the work that you're doing in this particular area. So if I click my change presenter button, I should be able to give you control.
Sure. Brilliant.
There you go. Yep, I can see your slides now.
Okay, sorry. Hopefully my internet connection does hold up. I've had a bit of a trouble this morning, but it's great to be with you all this morning. So I said, I'm Robert. I'm the Southern Hub leader at the foundation, and my responsibility is at the forefront in terms of operational and delivering the programs that support our young people. So the EY Foundation, we're an independent charity that has a strong focus on social mobility. Our whole remit as an organisation is to break down barriers to employment, and we do this through delivering employability programs that equip young people with the skills to transition into the world of work. So we actually operate in 17 different locations across 4 different hubs as well. So I, as I say, manage the Southern Hub, and as you can see there, you've got the sort of in the bottom right hand of the screen, you've got the map of all the different locations that we operate in as well. And we very much work in collaboration as well. So we work with local authorities, we work with schools, we work with charities, and we also work with corporate partners as well. So we, as you expect, get fantastic support from EY, but that's very much as a platform, and on this foundation then, but not as a pun intended, but yeah, well, that's very much as a platform for us to broaden and deepen the impact of the work that we do with young people. And I think at this point it's worth just sort of following up on some of the context of why we work with young people who we perceive face barriers into employment. And poverty is one of those key factors that we have identified. And you see here from some of the stats I'm going to bring up on the screen that 24% of young people on free school meals go on to higher education. 9 children in every class are growing up in poverty. 5% of young people on free school meals gain entrance to most selective universities. Free school meal students are 3 times more likely to be out of work by the age of 27. Social mobility is often said that it's stagnant in the UK. And finally, 70% of internships are unpaid. And these stats are very much pre-COVID world as well. So you would only think that the dial is moving in a negative way in this sense. And I think this context very much sort of set the scene for our programs, and that context feeds into the eligibility criteria for our programs. So Smart Futures is one of our first flagship programs, and it's an employability program for very much ambitious young people on free school meals or the college bursary. So for those of you who don't know, free school meals is a household income of say less than £16,500 a year. And it's a 10 months program. It supports 16, 17-year-olds. It provides paid employability training, of which some of this is accredited or recognised. So you've got the Chartered Management Institute. We've delivered a level 2 award in team leadership, or our program is recognised through the Institute of Leadership and Management as well. And we also recently become an approved centre for the Royal Society of Public Health to deliver a qualification on emotional well-being. Alongside that, we provide the 1 week paid work experience, and that's complemented by a one-to-one business mentoring as well, which has really improved over the last few years. We provide mentors with session plans. There's a mentoring platform that we're launching this year. And there's an alumni program, so we constantly feed our alumni different opportunities, whether that's arranged sessions on different themes, it could be technology, university, apprenticeships, etc., or provide them with bespoke opportunities. And all of this is about introducing young people to employers, and we recognise, a lot of our young people just don't have that professional network, and it's about, whether it's through a mentor, whether it's through the work experience speakers on our programs, is trying to enhance, improve that network for our young people. So Smart Future is just one. We also have Our Future. Our Future supports young people who face further barriers into employment. So Smart Futures is for young people who are achieving academically, but I say are from low-income families, whereas Our Future is for young people who are from low-income families, but also have some other barriers like lower attainment. They could have had previously poor attendance, poor behaviour at school, could be a carer, etc. And we provide them similar interventions in like paid employability training, work experience, mentoring, but over a more intensive 6-month period. And we've actually got 3 programs launching next week, funny enough. Care to Employment is a brand new program, and I would start by saying that's a working title. I think naming programs is one of the most difficult things to do. So we've actually done that job and actually asking the young people to actually name the program on day 1 of the program next week. We are launching it in Hounslow with 10 young people next week, and that supports young people who are in care, so who are 16, 17 years of age, who are in care, coming up to sort of obviously leaving care. And that's a program that's been around about a year in development. We've been working very closely with the Care Tech Foundation, and we've consulted with 80 care experienced young people, employers, had a steering group of different professionals, all to develop the sort of blueprint of the program. The stats for young people in care in terms of their sort of progression is shocking. So again, like poverty, we realise there's a real need there, and we've looked to act. The program itself provides guaranteed intervention, so that's like 4 weeks, over 4 weeks of pay, work experience, financial literacy support, accreditation on well-being, business mentoring, etc. And that's supplemented by what we're going to have progression coaches, so EYF team members who are going to work with the young people to do strengths and needs analysis, tailor the guaranteed interventions, but also layer on top some bespoke support. So for example, if they need support with conflict management, we can refer them to a partner, or we can signpost, and we also have a dedicated bursary as part of that program as well. So that's a little snapshot of our programs. We also have support social enterprises. We also do employability skills training days in schools, in EY, we're now virtually as well. And I suppose I just want to touch upon about how we have responded or are responding to COVID-19 in terms of delivering our programs. Well, stating the obvious, first of all, it's all made face-to-face delivery impossible. So we took a sort of, I suppose, a couple of stages in terms of our approach. First off, we listened. So we provided young people with a voice through our social media campaign, #VoiceForYoungPeople. And that was really a nice opportunity. I'd like to provide a platform for young people to share how they feel on the platform, to give ideas about how they want support as well. And we also gained some quite interesting stats in that regard, in that in that sort of 40, I think about half of the young people were worried about sort of exams and pressure, exams and how it would affect their schooling, etc. as well. And about a quarter of them, on top of that, were worried about sort of work experience opportunities being withdrawn, being taken away. So we then responded. So we developed and delivered an online employability skills session. So these are on various different themes throughout Easter. So we delivered a number of these sessions. The team pulled together that. And we launched an online mentoring program pilot. And that was reach out to all of our alumni. And we had a fantastic response from them. And we had about 71 young people who wanted further support, further mentoring at this time. And again, volunteers were keen to help. And so we were able to match and deliver that program during the ISE. And in the meantime, we also evolved and developed our programs. So we updated content, changed the structure of our programs as well. So that was, as I say, a key factor in terms of being able to be moving to a virtual delivery model. So I'll just get one more slide. So I've got two screens down here. There we go. So we then sort of moving on to summer delivery. So over the summer, we actually supported 200 young people, and that was achieved with the support of over 350 volunteers as well. So we were really proud of that. We recognized that these young people are only 16, 17, 18 years of age once. So they need these opportunities now. So by evolving, we realized we couldn't just take our program and make it virtual overnight. There was some challenges that need to be overcome. I think many of the challenges were indeed practical as well. So all of the young people have a laptop as part of the program. So you can imagine trying to deliver 200 laptops to 200 different addresses, checking addresses, getting them onboarded, set up, using the laptops as well. So there's some practical challenges that were to be overcome in that regard. And onboarding, so the young people are paid. So we really passionately believe that the young people should be paid for their time, their work experience. And as part of that, they actually are onboarded and in effect are work for the EY Foundation. So we had to do right to work checks. And normally we do that in a room where we can do it face to face, nice and quick, but we had to do that to around 200 odd right to work checks. So that was a case of checking availability, setting up all those calls as well. And then it's actually thinking about how to deliver certain interventions. So things like the mock interviews. If you're in a big room, you can, a program manager can coordinate that quite effectively. Whereas online, you've got other things to consider, like safeguarding. So you've got to work around solutions around how to get the same impact, but in a different environment, if you like. And some of the one big surprise for me, which I didn't really factor as much, was around webcams. And I think that's really, really important thing to consider. At the start, we were quite laid back, I feel, and really saying to the young people, if you don't want to go on webcam, that's absolutely fine. But our tone changed a little bit. And the reason was because it's so, I don't know about you, but names and faces, you know, being able to develop that interaction between us, the young people, between young people themselves and young people and volunteers is so much more better and powerful if you can see that individual. So we started to provide some more additional support about, you know, if you're worried about your background, we're really conscious of the young people that we support may not be in 5-bedroom houses with lovely wallpaper, if you don't mind me saying. So it's about sort of saying how you're going to blur the background. It may not be familiar with teams, so offering practical guidance in that sense, and also then explaining the reason why it's so good to be on cam. So from our start of our summer to the end, we you know, most of our young people were on camera towards the end of our programs, which I think was good. There's also employees and volunteers to factor. First off, it's more accessible. So, you know, no matter where you are in the country, you can volunteer, which is great. So, and that was reflected in our volunteer numbers. So it opened up the world, so to speak, for our programs, and we were able to utilise our whole network across the UK. But it did require some more support in some areas. So work experience, so hosting a young person. We found a lot of hosts, quite understandably, needed a little bit more guidance and support about what does virtual work experience look like. So we had to do more training. We also actually developed a fictional case study of a drinks business, and you know, developed a whole different factors of it. And that was then enable the team, if they wasn't sure what to do, they could then say the marketing team take that element and give them a bit of an insight from their perspective and ask the young people to work on this business. So we gave examples, provided examples, which that team could then pick up, tailor and run with, if you like. Young people themselves have all provided really positive feedback. I feel like, speak personally, I think the utopia is face-to-face delivery, definitely. But as I mentioned before, we realise that the young people need support now. And I think I'm proud of what the team did in terms of delivering and you know, delivering programs that develop awareness and knowledge and skills and providing that opportunity as well. And I don't think, you know, when things do, if return to normal, please God, that we will then just revert directly to a face-to-face model. I think we will cherry pick the best bits out of this experience as well, and maybe have some hybrid model. But you've got some nice stats there in terms of some of the feedback for young people. I realise I'm sort of got 30 seconds left. Just to mention something, some of the benefits of working with us for employers, if there are any employers listening, is that we are very much about trying to support diversity across different sectors, and we feel like our programs do help upskill volunteers as well, and they provide nice quality engagement opportunities with young people, and it helps with brand awareness at the same time. And what we try to do with all of our programs is provide that end-to-end service. So we support and manage the recruitment, volunteer DBS, all the training. So we mentioned we've got a mentoring platform. As the young people are paid, we pay the young people, we do all the insurance, HR processes as well. So try to take the sort of admin and burden of that so they can get the good bits, if you like, in terms of working with the young people. And as I said, like, yeah, we provide that sort of dedicated one-to-one support. So I will leave it there. Here are some of our current corporate partners, Blue Prism, shout out to Blue Prism being a key one of them. And we do recently have an impact report, and I'm sure I can share these slides, but there's a link on our website to our recent impact report as well. I'm 30 seconds over, but that's okay, Steve.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for that insight. That was really useful. Ronan, can I switch to you now? Obviously, so you're from the employer side of things. Can you just set the scene a little bit? I mean, what is it like working with this crisis at the moment as a business? I mean, is it something that that's significantly impacted your business, or you're doing okay at the moment?
I think we're very fortunate, Stephen. Obviously, working in Blue Prism, if people on the call aren't aware of the work that Blue Prism does, we're an automation company. So we work in building RPA, which is robotic process automation, which uses digital workers to do the work of humans. So things like data entry and configuration and moving data from one format to another, that can be done by a robot a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently than a human. And it can allow the human workers to actually do more of the work that's a lot more useful, such as contacting customers. So we've been hit less than a lot of other sectors, especially things like hospitality and the arts as well. I think we've been very lucky there. Obviously, we've been hit and we've been impacted as everyone else has, but not in the same way. It's been quite fortunate, really. But obviously, there's things that we need to take into account, and obviously, money does tend to drive a lot of these things. And with people having to, across the globe, reduce their staff, they wouldn't necessarily have any money that they want to then invest in a digital worker, because people come first with the vast majority of companies, which is rightfully so, in my opinion.
Got it, exactly. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your work with the EY Foundation? How did that come about, and what have you been doing?
Yes, so on a more positive note, the work with the EY Foundation has been, honestly, it's been fantastic. I will just throw it out that I have worked with the EY Foundation in the past. I used to work for EY about 3 years ago as a fresh grad, right off the university block, and spent a year working with them and spent a year helping them out, and helped run one of the Smart Futures programs back in 2017, which was really good. They do a lot of good work, either in person and now virtual. And when I moved over to Blue Prism, my manager, Matt Bloomfield, I brought that to him to say, I think it'd be great if we do this and help him. And he told me it was already in the pipeline. So I was happy to help out. It's been really good working with everyone from the north. So I live and work in the northwest, in Manchester and Warrington. And it's been easy to try and sort of commute into Manchester to speak to people like Robert. You'll know people like Anita and Jodie McNally, who have been fantastic. And one of the things I will say is that adjusting from a in-place placement to a virtual placement was very easy and very well facilitated by the EY Foundation. So everything beforehand that was set up. So your NSPCC training that you do and a DBS check for all mentors, that is mandatory, because if you're going to be being a mentor and obviously dealing one-to-one, you need to have safeguarding, which is obviously at the forefront of any dealing with children or people underage that are from worse off backgrounds. It needs to have to be done, and that was organised really well. And swapping across from obviously the disappointment of we couldn't have the students in to see the workplace, we wouldn't be able to interact with them physically. It was really good to be able to speak to them over Teams like this, and as Robert's mentioned, it's good to have them on webcam and communicate with them. Even if it's not in the same space, you can still interact with them. And we've got a nice couple of videos as well. I know that EY Foundation put one out as well, and that are available on our LinkedIn, which is on Blue Prism, or probably the best one to be our Blue Prism for Good. And there's lots of the great work that's come out. But working with EY Foundation was really easy to set up and really nicely done. The students, as I'm sure that Amaddeep and Callum are portraying, they're very bright, they're very driven. It's not just because they're from a low-income background, they're they're lazy or they're not as well educated. They're very smart students. They really want to go for it. And all 10 of them that we had were really bright and really wanted to get the most out of this experience. So it was a delight for us, really. They really blew us away with some of the presentations they did, some of the work they did. We gave them assessment center level tasks, and it was quite a delight to see just how well they knocked them out of the park. But the reason that we started this is because we're a sector and a company that are quite fortunate to be able to work remotely. And one thing we can do is provide a set of skills that aren't provided at a, say, education level of high school or college. So we provide a certificate and we provide a free university, so Blue Prism University, which is available on our website. Accreditations as well that are third-party certified, like the Blue Prism developer. Students can work towards them and gain them, because back in my day, when I was a student, everyone had things like your Duke of Edinburgh, and everyone had what was working towards the A-levels and then potentially going on to get a degree. But aside from that, you could do very little else. sort of certification wise, but we want to hopefully push our certification to one of these topics. You can then say, oh, well, what else have you done? So EU Foundation providing the CMI is a fantastic head start for any student to say, well, as well as being a top tier student, having the great grades, great drive as well, that both Callum and Amardeep are showing, really well educated and well spoken. They've also got a certification to prove that they can back up everything they're saying. We want to help bulk that out because a lot of the time it is sort of accessibility for some students. So I was fortunate enough when I was in school to have a sort of guidance and careers team that were maybe more proactive than other schools. I went to a state school as well. I didn't go to private school. So I think in more state schools in maybe worse off areas, they don't have the access. So they're less able to get it. So programs like the EU Foundation that provide the mentorship. I'm mentoring a young lad, Declan now, who wants to go on to do a degree/apprenticeship with a company, which I think is fantastic that he knows what that is and he's got the drive. But a lot of students aren't as lucky to know what they want to do right away. And I'm sure I'll challenge both of you if you know what you wanted to do at the age of 17, 18, because I definitely didn't. I think it's been really fantastic work.
I thought I did. I didn't think I'd be doing this, but
exactly, yeah, exactly. But no, it's been a really fantastic experience. We hope we can do it again next year and in the years to come to create a sort of lasting partnership with EY and the EY Foundation. But no, I would definitely recommend for people in the audience who have businesses that have the capacity to take in students and mentor, because they think they can give students skills that they can even take on to either their own sector or another sector if it's just simple management skills and other personal skills that they can give to them. Please reach out to them. They're really accessible. They're really happy to talk to you. And the more people that reach out to them, the bigger they can make these projects. So going from maybe 200 students this year, maybe 300 next year, just to really have an impact on these young people that do deserve a good chance. It's just having the opportunity given to them and making it available to them.
Cool, thanks, Ron. Just a quick reminder to people listening in, we've got a couple of minutes left at the end where we can cover off some questions, so pop them in the dialogue box if you do want to ask any questions before we close. But can I just ask, Ronan, what do you find are the key messages that you need to get over to the likes of Amardeep and Callum? You know, what do you think the biggest challenges that they see and that you as an organisation can help them with?
That's a good question. So some of the big challenges that face young people is obviously having the resources, and they both brought up they have very little given and laid out for them as it should be by their careers advisors. My main suggestion would be to use as many alternatives as possible. So yes, you can ask as many people for as much advice as you can, but also think about using, I know obviously social media is a big influencer right now, so use that as much as you can as well. And I know one thing that the UI Foundation do well is make sure all students sign up to LinkedIn and make sure they get that going and rolling. So we've done the same thing for all 10 students. All the mentors have been telling their mentees to get on LinkedIn, set up a profile and start growing it, even if it's just adding random people, just to make sure that you can then grow that presence and make sure that when it does come to applying for a job, you have the connections available. Any experience you have, you can list it, and keep trying. Please get in touch with as many people as you can and do as much research as you can to find things like your foundation, Kickstart, and all these programs that are available, because it is unfortunate that we can't reach all the students, but we'd love to be able to. It's just trying to find that connection. And the more presence you have on different platforms, whether that's your college Moodle to things like LinkedIn, the easier it'll be for companies like EY and the EY Foundation programs to find you. And hopefully if they do find you and you find them, you'll be able to contact and fingers crossed you'll be able to take part in one of these wonderful placements.
And Rob, I wonder if I could ask the same question of you, actually, that if there are some because we heard that, you know, very, very articulate descriptions of actually what it's like for Callum and Amardeep and their friends and fellow students. You know, what do you think? What are the key messages that you as a foundation are trying to get across to young people, particularly? You know, I mean, these are difficult. The areas of deprivation we're talking about, the problems of social mobility, these are issues that have been around pre-COVID, but obviously worse. So what are those key things that you are the message you're trying to get across, Rob?
I think that I think a lot of us, even see, I'm sure you agree, like during the period of lockdown, motivation is such a, I see it with my own daughter, like being at home for 6 months. Anyway, it will test anyone's motivation. So trying to be active and to still seek out those opportunities as and when they are available, I think is a really important message, and something that we always say to the young people is that if you do go to an alumni event or apply or speak to your mentor or ask that question, you never know where it can lead. So I think we had some programs that were up and running during when lockdown happened. So we initially postponed, say, the sort of work experience element of it. And we found that it was really important to sort of keep in touch with the young people, just check in how they're doing, and as I say, just trying to provide that added incentive motivation to still keep looking out there for opportunities, the next opportunity that employers are still really thinking of them. Because I think there's so much negativity, to try and give them that hope is important. We all need a little bit of that. Yeah.
And Sam, can I come to you with a question? Obviously, EY Foundation is a great example. We've heard of Ronan, doing really good work, both himself and also the organisation Blue Prism. What would your advice be to employers who are sat there going, "Oh, I don't quite know what to do. I should be doing something. I'm not sure. We've got so many swamped with other priorities." Are there any key messages that you get across to that audience?
Yeah, I think that's one of the key things out of this webinar today. To any of the employers who are on the webinar or might be watching afterwards, this is about what you can do for your community, and I know that there are lots of employers who will be wanting to help. It's difficult to know where to turn and which sort of support is available, so it's really looking at what government schemes now look like. I have mentioned the Kickstart scheme. It's not all about Kickstart, but that is the wages are being paid of young people, so do have a look at that and see whether that would be appropriate for your organisation. There's apprenticeship routes, obviously, to build your businesses. There's traineeships, which are fantastic routes for young people to come into to learn their trade. And I just really implore that this has to be a community effort. So there needs to be the support in place from charities like EY Foundation, employers like Blue Prism, and others stepping forward and really, looking at what can we do. That has to be the question. What can we do? And then turning and looking at what's available. From a government's perspective, I mean, as Amandeep and Callum sort of really well articulated, a lot of the government schemes are only for young people who are in job centres. So that's why they may not have heard of Kickstart, and quite, government needs to look at what else is available for young people who aren't necessarily coming through a job centre, what else is out there, and really getting that information to them, and employers making sense of all these routes and what they might be able to do as a business. I think that's really important.
Fantastic, thanks, Sam. And I think, yes, I had the same thoughts around actually why Cam and Amandeep might not have come across Kickstarter yet, because of who it's aimed at. But I think we should give the last word to Amandeep and Callum. We are just over the hour, so but let's have just a final question, I think, to you two, because the ISE is an employer-led organisation. That's the core of our audience. I mean, are there any key messages that the two of you would like to get over to employers? Obviously, the bottom line is jobs. I mean, we know that is providing that. But actually, what is it that employers can really do that would make a difference to yourselves now, that would help you in this difficult climate? Could I go to you first, Amandeep, on that question?
Yeah. The more I think about it, really, the more I realise that there's almost something, dare I say, Machiavellian about the issue at hand. I believe that whilst the issue isn't intentional, it is largely transpired by two things, and that is people, mainly schools, doing the bare minimum, and the government lacking the fundamental initiative to create awareness around its interventions, and as Sam mentioned, supporting incentives for hirers like those that might be listening to the webinar today, in making prospects for the most struggling students possible. Yes, there are a growing number of career advisors in schools. Yes, the government has introduced the Kickstart scheme, but there's an element of this that I as students see as a mere tick box exercise. What good is a career advisor when you, as Callum has experienced, never met them? What good is there's a Kickstart scheme when there is no awareness of it in areas like mine where it's needed most? What we need is supererogatory action. We need institutions like the EY Foundation, like Impetus, like the ISE, like Ronan's work, that are dedicated to resolving the issue, that is getting worse as the war against the pandemic wages on. What I find almost sardonic is the phrase of this invisible killer that we've associated with COVID-19. Although unseen, it corrupts and destroys whatever comes in its way. But I believe that the true invisible killer in society today is that whose impact we are still yet to experience. And that is the youth unemployment crisis. Yes, for now, us young people are silent. Perhaps we're not even aware of the problem that we're yet to face. But if not resolved, this invisible killer will inexorably have its impact, and in essence will be far more structural than the cyclical wave of unemployment that many experts claim for it to be.
Cool. Thank you, Amity. Very articulate. And Callum, last comment to you. What is it that you think that employers can really do to help you in this climate?
I mean, honestly, I agree with a lot of what Amandeep said, to be honest, that we need more schemes like the EY Foundation, like what has been mentioned before, like Kickstart. We need more awareness. And I believe that personally what I think employers can do is if they sort of advertise more, but find ways of appealing to people my age, like find ways of advertising, maybe even social media, things that people my age will see to try and get those messages across to us so that we can get more people involved, we can get more people active and working, and we can stop people getting to the point where it gets, I mean, as I think Sam said before, that the more time you're employed, the harder it is to get employed. And I think the best way of doing that is by doing these schemes, giving people like myself a chance to actually show the world we can be a good worker, show the world what we are capable of. That's what I think we need, more opportunities for that.
Fantastic. That's great. Can I just say, I think we need to wrap it up there because we've been over an hour, so, and I can see people are starting to drop off because obviously the next Zoom or Teams call is probably looming. So thank you very much for all your insights, all of you. Sam, Robert, Ronan, and particularly Amandeep and Callum, our two students on the call. You've given some really good insights. I think there's a really strong message here, which is to employers. There is a big issue of youth unemployment. I mean, I'm conscious of it. We put our own stats out. We talk about actually, there is still a jobs market out there, and we don't want people to lose heart, but we mustn't lose sight of the lived experience of an awful lot of people who are facing very difficult times at the moment. I think it makes commercial sense for employers to get involved in this, but also there's that giving back to society that makes it a really important thing for us all to be involved in. So thank you very much for your time. Attendees on this, you will get a link to the recording of this webinar, so you can go back and pick up on anything that you want to recap on. Also, please share that link with your friends and your peers, because an issue like this, the more that we can get a conversation going about this, the better. So thanks from me. Thanks very much to our panelists for giving up their time. Thanks to Amandeep and Callum. Talk to you all very soon. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. See you.